Hello, hello, check. All right. Hello, hello. Can I get bass? A little bit of bass. Yeah. Hello, check. A little bit of pitch and echo thoda sa kam. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, check. Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I cannot hear people at the back. Good evening, everyone. All right. So it's a full house, isn't it? And everybody is on time and everybody is very excited for this amazing, amazing launch. And trust me, guys, we are so glad that you're all here. Can we hear it for all of you? Please give a huge round of applause for all of yourselves. Come on. So, we were anticipating a lot of guests, obviously, but we weren't anticipating 3 rooms, all full house. So, can we have a huge round of applause for the already achieved success that we have? So, tell me, guys, how many of y'all have already read the book? Can you raise your hands? When I say read the book, I say all the pages, not here and there. Because you're going to get caught if you are not lying. Ma'am, you have read, I believe you're telling the truth. You've read all the pages, you've read the entire book. Ma'am, what's your good name?
My name is Shobhana Rana and I work very closely with the author in Delhi.
All right, please give a huge round of applause. Anyone else who's read the complete book, the entire book, it's already the bestseller? Ma'am, you have? Ma'am, can we please have a huge round of applause for ma'am here? Ma'am, if I may ask you, what is that one thing that you found exceptionally beautiful about the book?
So I'm speaking on the panel. I had no choice but to read the book fully from page to page, but it is striking for me to enjoy every page. And I'm going to call it the 3 Fs. The first one is the future, the second one is faith, and the third one is female power.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing that. I need a bigger round of applause. Come on, everyone. Give it up for her. She's going to be on the panel, ma'am. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on panel. And we have some amazing guests on the panel today. And all of you all here who are here on time, you're going to have a great, great time. Anybody from the back who's read the book? Anybody? The whole book? You're all here for the first copy, the signed copy, yeah? Okay. So what we're going to do is, anyone who has gone through the book, who's very interested and has any questions for the author, because we have the author right here and would love to take some of the questions. It is your chance, your opportunity, all right. First of all, let's give a huge, huge round of applause for our author, come on. Sir, I think this is your 9th book, am I right? So it's his 9th one, and sir, I want to ask you, how was the experience writing this book? Because, of course, this is about the journey, the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister. So, sir, if you could say a few lines, how was the journey and the research, what all got in for the writing of the book?
You're asking me to give my speech here. Well, how do you think it was?
I think it would have been quite great.
See, we professors have a way of turning the questions back to our students. So. Well, it's been an exciting journey, especially because I can say this much. Just the one-on-one conversations with the Honorable PM. He doesn't make you feel uncomfortable that he's the Prime Minister. It's so normal and it's like talking to a friend. And that is a different book by itself. All the conversations are not in the book, obviously, because a lot of conversations we had. But I think the beauty is his public persona is what people see. There are 2 extremes of his personality for people, and thanks to Zaka and others, they have their views and they present him in particular platforms in particular ways. But what I saw him in person was a very deep, compassionate, intensely spiritual, very different human being at a different level. And that's what I've tried to capture in this book.
Thank you so much, sir. One thing I found particularly interesting is that how beautifully you have used those Sanskrit words and sloks. I think it is one of the most unique aspect of the book. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing. I'm not going to steal your speech away because I know you have a lot more to say. But I think our audience might, because ma'am here has a question. Ma'am, if you could just say your name and one question, if you could just pose.
Well, I have no right to ask you a question because I've just read a few pages. But I was very impressed with the fact that you have talked about Bhishma giving Yudhishthir the advice of being Rajdharma and how he follows it. So I can see that most of it is it based on these principles of Rajdharma, and what exactly have you covered all this, because I can see some of those qualities in the Prime Minister, which I have of course not read fully.
Well, this is essentially a book on the Indian appreciation of leadership. We normally, all of us, including me, post-Harvard, we are all trained to believe that leadership is a product exported from the West. We all grow up on that fodder of, Swami Vivekananda very powerfully said more than 100 years ago that you give an Indian child a high school education, the first thing it learns is to say our country is useless, we Indians are useless, our parents are all rubbish. And he says that the pride that we need to take in Bharatiyata is something which is very different. And for once, I've tried to capture this and present it in a way which we can all be proud to be Indians.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guests are here. Please give them a huge round of applause. Come on. Hello. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rishika Keshri, and I'm going to be your host for this amazing, amazing evening. It's a pleasure to have all of you all here. And let me tell you once again that we have 3 more halls full of guests, and everybody's so excited for this grand launch. Everyone, please give yourself a huge round of applause. Now, I would like to invite our guests on stage. And first of all, our chief guest is here. So let me take this opportunity, and it's an honor to have you here, sir. Let's give a huge round of applause for Mr. M. Chandrasekaran. Sir, could we please have you on stage? Thank you for joining us, sir. Please. Next up, I would like to invite on stage Dr. Bala Subramaniam. Give it up for our author. Thank you for joining us. Next up, I would like to invite Mr. Adil Janul Bhai. Huge round of applause. Thank you for joining us, sir. And last but not the least, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan. Huge round of applause. Thank you for joining us, sir. Now I request all our guests and the audience to please get ready for Saraswati Vandana.
शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योति
Thank you so much. I request all our guests to please have a seat. And before we start the event, please switch off your mobile phones or put it on aeroplane mode. It's time we get started with this wonderful event that we've all been waiting for. Thank you once again for being here. Now it's time for me to invite Mr. Adil Janal Bhai for the welcome address. Please give him a huge round of applause.
Good evening, namaskar. Good evening. Okay, good. I'm glad the snacks worked. So thank you all for being here for a very momentous occasion. We are starting a little early. We are breaking all rules by starting early. And the reason we are starting early is that so many of you have shown up early for this, that rather than make everyone wait, now that all 3 or 4 rooms are full, we thought we should start. So first of all, thank you all for showing such enthusiasm. I have a great job, which is to introduce people who actually don't need any introduction, but I'll do that anyway. So let me start out with Dr. Balasubramaniam, who's written this book. Obviously, his bio is on the cover, and I have a long list of things that he has done, which I don't want to cover, but I will only say 4 words about him and expand on those 4 words in just a few words. One, Dr. Balu is an intellectual. He's written 7 books. He's written 7 books. He has many degrees, most of which I don't know about. It's many more than I or any of us have. And he's a lifelong learner and thinker and discoverer. And even in this book, the amount of intellectual thinking that has gone into it, as you will see, is quite amazing. So first, he's a great intellectual. Second, he's a great teacher. He has been teaching for a long time. He's taught at Cornell, leadership at Cornell for 15 years or 14 years. At IIT Delhi, he actually, even today, every Wednesday, he gives a lecture on policy. So he's a lifelong teacher, and that's what he brings to this book. Third, he's a great human being. And many of you may not know that he's lived in tribal areas for 30 years. He started a hospital there. He looks after the tribals. And he has sued the government at least 30 times on behalf of the tribals. So he's also a great activist and a great human being. And one of the wonderful things he talks about is, while he converses with all of us who are his colleagues, his partners, we talk to him intellectually, but he is most at home talking to his tribals with whom he goes and visits every so often, and that is what grounds him again. So he's a wonderful human being. And lastly, and I could go on with many other words, lastly, he's a friend. I've only known Dr. Balu for 3 years at the Capacity Building Commission, and in the 3 years, he's become a great friend. As someone once told me, if for every year of your life you make one really good friend, you'll have a lot of friends by the time you get to be my age. And, Balu, it's a privilege and an honor to consider you my friend. So that's my introduction of Balu. Let me introduce other folks on the panel who are as distinguished as Balu. And let me start out with Chandra. So let me ask this audience, does anyone not know Chandra? So now you need an introduction? No, listen, sorry? No, sometimes when we can't achieve things, it's a great privilege to talk about someone who has achieved it all, okay? And that is... And, some people talk about the great iconic things that he has done at Tata Sons over the last 7 years. Some people talk about the great things that happened at TCS. Some people talk about the fact that he is a marathon runner. I don't know how he finds the time to do that. But all of that is just amazing. Obviously, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 2022. and is a man of deep values, beliefs in culture, and deeply rooted in Indic thoughts, which is why he's written a blurb on this, and which is why he agreed to come and talk about this. So I won't steal any of your thunder, other than to say that with all of that, you're obviously the perfect person to talk about and be the lead speaker for a book like this. Dr. Swati Piramal, who we haven't fit on stage as yet, but she'll be here for the panel. Swati, if we could request you to stand up so everyone can see. You know, Swati is also greatly accomplished in a huge number of areas. Not only is she's the vice chairperson of Piramal Group, involved in business, involved in health sciences, real driver of some of the health science businesses of Piramal, but she's also and a personal scientist, and with a huge number of contributions and innovations in new medicines and public health services. But what she loves, there are three things that she loves, so I want to talk to you about that, and that's why we have her here, okay? First, she loves medicine and young people. At any time, she's involved in getting a large number of people who enter medicine to really understand what medicine is about and to give it their all. And she is a great inspiration to generations of doctors. You walk into KEM Hospital, and every doctor there will have a story about what Swati has done for him or her when they were, you know, little kids wandering around. So that's the first thing that's striking about her in addition to her business. The second thing is that she is a great lover of art, culture, food. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see her art and her talking about it. If you have had an opportunity to talk about culture, Indic culture of various types, and have a talk about it, or if any of you have had the real luxury of eating at Swati Piramal's house, okay? And actually, in addition to everything else she has done, the food that she's interested in is unbelievable. So, Swati, with that great background, it is wonderful that you have achieved all of that, and therefore you're also the perfect person to talk about this book. I now have the great pleasure of introducing three IIT Bombay people who've all gone their different ways. Okay? That includes you. Yeah, no, but I'm more in the traditional way. So I'll start out with Prabhuji, who has agreed to come here and was regaling us with stories of what he did when he was in a hostel at IIT Bombay. Prabhuji, everyone knows you, but could I request you to stand? As you know, he is a mindful meditation expert, sustainability advocate, and social welfare catalyst who serves on ISKCON's governing body commission and is a member of the board of founders of Rishihood University. He's also responsible for a wonderful initiative on the outskirts of Mumbai, which I would encourage you to explore, called Govardhan Eco Village, which has won the United Nations World Tourism Organization Award. He's also a great author, and of course he learnt all of that while he was at IIT. So Guruji, thank you so much for joining us here. I also want to introduce another IITian who is actually the IIT Institute Chair Professor at the Cell for Indian Science and Technology, Dr. Ramasubramanian. We were very keen to get an academic to be part of the panel, and Dr. Ramasubramanian, thank you so much for joining us. He's a world-class scholar with a unique combination of ability in sciences, Sanskrit, and spirituality. As a historian of Indian mathematics and astronomy, a Sanskrit scholar, a Vedic teacher, and a philosopher, and I can't go on, to be honest. It's too many ands. His unparalleled multidisciplinary scholarship and popular teachings have inspired thousands of students. I want to give you a personal story. I requested Professor to come for this panel, and he said, I'll come, but I have to read the book first. So he read the book, and then he called me and he said, you know, I've read the book and it inspired me to write a series of shlokas in Sanskrit. Right? And I said, listen, that's wonderful, but please publish it. But so you can just see how he will immediately translate what he has learned into something that is relevant to all of us. So thank you very much for joining us. Okay, and one more IITian before I forget. Ashish Chavan. Ashish, where are you? Oh, sorry. I'm so lost. So Ashish, of course, many of you have known. He was at the NSC and BSc. He's now at NSC, a technocrat from IIT Bombay and IIM Calcutta. He was part of the founding team at NSC. And he's done so many things to build up all these institutions. He's also offered immediately when we decided to have this. He said, I will be involved and I will sponsor it. So thank you so much, Ashish. He's also an author. So I think everybody here is an author. Chandra, have you written a book? Yes. Okay, good. So otherwise you can't stay on the stage. We only want people who have written books. Thank you. So he's also written a book which is The Process of Maintaining an Equilibrium, which addresses his life's journey. He's been awarded many awards in India and abroad, and I won't go through the full list, Ashish, because many people here know you, and thank you. Now I'd also like to introduce the moderator of this esteemed panel. I don't know how you're going to do this, but if I were you, I'd just ask them to tell IIT jokes and everyone will be very happy. But I know this has to be a very serious panel, so it only takes somebody like Zaka to actually lead the panel. Zaka, please. As you know, Zaka is you see him on the news. You see him at 9 o'clock. He's the managing editor of CNN News 18, so I've known him for some time. He hosts the channel's flagship show, Brass Tacks, in prime time. He's done an amazing amount of work in foreign and international affairs. He has interviewed leaders all over the world. And I thought that because he had interviewed leaders all over the world, and among anchors, he has the most modulated voice, right? He's not a screamer, so we thought this would be a wonderful person to have a wonderful discussion. So Zaka, thank you all very much. And so I think have I missed anyone? I'm looking to Amit in case he wants me to introduce anyone else. So as you can see, it is an extraordinary collection of people who come here to discuss the book. I will not say anything more about the book because the panelists will talk about it, and they are much more capable of talking about the book and what is in there. All I can say is that I have read it, and I've read it several times, and I've been involved in several of these events to introduce it, and each time I discover something more new and interesting here, not just for business people, but for students, for academics, and for normal life. So I will encourage all of you to read the book since you all have a book. I think all of you have a book there. We will release it in a bit. But with that, let me formally welcome all of the panelists here. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much, sir. I think you've made my job so much easy because I think each one of the panelists as well as the members on the stage, they've been introduced beautifully, and now we know a personal bit about all of them. So thank you so much. Please give a huge round of applause for Mr. Adil. And now it's time for our author to come in. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time we hear the inspiration for writing the wonderful book. Let's welcome Dr. Bala Subramaniam. Please, a huge round of applause.
Good evening, namaskar, and thank you for coming, all the three halls. I think when Adil was introducing, it sort of touched my heart that he could call me a friend. And he's an extraordinary colleague to have with you. And possibly I keep telling him that he's never behaved like a chairman of the commission. And he's somebody who, he's just there, that's all. And we could go to him with anything, and so it's a real honor and a privilege. When I started the book had progressed quite a bit. It's frustrating to write a book in the first place. I keep correcting Adil, but it's my 9th book. He keeps going back to number 7, I don't know why. And it is frustrating in many sense because you always feel that you can do it better. And especially when you're writing about a person with a 78% approval rating, you're also writing about a person where the decibel levels of people who don't like him are very loud. And there's also a chance that you can be dismissed off as a sycophant. You're treading on very careful, it's a very difficult ground. And so I would turn to Adil not as anybody else, but as the friend that he called me and say, what should I do? And he would say, well, all that noise is going to be there. You can't help it. Just write the book. And the book progressed into a manuscript. But what you see today as a book is actually the hard work of several people. And I first would like to thank all of them, though I can't name all of them. My excellent set of researchers who worked day and night, and I made their lives quite miserable. One of my former grad students at Cornell who was simply decided that she has to be the editor for the American edition. And like that, I had a set of lot of people, Dr. Anuradha for the Sanskrit inputs that I could simply ask her, pick up the phone and ask her and trouble her. The Brihat Research Group in Hyderabad. And more importantly, there's also Amit sitting here. Because a manuscript doesn't become a book on its own, and you want a reader's perspective. So I'd always call Amit, and the best part is every suggestion he and Adil gave is also found its way into the book. And so it's very special for me that both of you are here. But why did I even write it? I keep quoting this at every launch. Thomas Carlyle, the great author, because I like his works. He says writing is a very painful process. He says it's like getting possessed by a demon. And you want to get rid of the possession. You want the demon to leave you. And you struggle. And the only way to leave you is when you finish the book. But then you're happy that the demon is now depossessed you and it's left you. But then you somehow again fall back into the trap of inviting the demon to possess you again. And that's why the 9 books. Somebody was asking me earlier today, what is the next book? I don't know. Possibly the fascinating conversations I had with the Honorable PM while writing this book is a book by itself. And if I do gather the energy to write it, and it'll happen. But more importantly, why a book on leadership? And where did this journey begin? Like Adil said, most of my life was, as a young physician, I just left mainstream medicine and went away and lived the best years of my life, living in the forest with the people I love the most, the indigenous communities, living like them, with them, amongst them, has been the greatest learning of my life. And very, very frustrated that the policies that these people are getting subjected to were completely with no understanding of how our rural communities and tribal communities live. People sitting in Delhi, I would always ask myself, can't these guys even have the common sense to understand that the ground realities are different? And these frustrations came out as several books. Some of them are very popular, I the Citizen or Voices from the Grassroots. And I even wrote in the preface to the I the Citizen that the only reason I wrote that book was to preserve my sanity. You believe in Gandhi so much that you don't want to take to violence. So the only way I could possibly sort of bring out my frustration was writing it. But then at some point of time, a deep sense of when the frustration turns into something which troubles you a lot, and obviously battling the state, suing them, getting beaten up, getting arrested, all that is fun part of an activist life. But more importantly, I had actually won the case against the state of Karnataka and the government of India. I had won the battles in the Human Rights Commission, and I thought I had achieved a lot. Two particular things which changed my approach was, during the process of this battle, a special rapporteur, a senior officer of the police services, who had retired, was appointed by the Human Rights Commission to look into the complaints I had made. And in one of the meetings where the chief secretaries of Karnataka and the secretary from Government of India and all of them were there, my demand was so aggressive that the officers lost their temper at me, and then there's a small break. The senior rapporteur called me out and said, Balu, I appreciate your passion, your concern for indigenous communities, but I want to leave you with one advice. Chaman Lal was the extraordinary police officer who I've written about him virtually in every book of mine. He called me aside and said, I want to give you one secret. I've been in government long enough, but I want to tell you, you must always remember as an activist to bend the government, but never break it. Because then you have a vacuum which nobody can fill. It didn't make immediate sense to me at that point of time, but today being inside government, I can see the rationale of it. We need a stable, structured system to solve the complex problems, the wicked problems, as Rittel and Weber call it in their paper, of the world itself. Today, the world is a mess. And it's a mess created by all of us. And therefore, answers have to come from us. And the second lesson I learned was very joyous. I was sitting back thinking that all the tribal chieftains, I was ordained a tribal by my chieftains, so I thought I had the liberty of being one of them. And sitting in that panchayat, I thought they'll all honor me and wish me well. One of the chieftains I've also written a lot about, Kempaya, whom I can call my leadership guru and mentor, was very sullen and sitting in a corner. And I asked him, Kempaya, we just won the battle. Nobody thought we can win a battle non-violently using the democratic institutions of this country, and we did it. And his immediate response was, you'll never understand. And I was wondering, what do you mean? We had the toughest time of our lives and we got what we wanted. We got land release, we got a lot of things done. And he said, you got a lot from the government, but what you're missing out is, in the process, we have lost our identity itself. The tribal identity, the Adivasiyat that we can call. He said, now we are also making us homogeneous products of the welfare of a state, which you'll never understand us, but just make us parasites on the system. Kempaya had the vision to even say this. Today's Kempayas are different. They all only stand like this, but he was different. And at that time, it struck me, what is this identity he's talking about? And it suddenly also struck me that my identity, being born and brought up in the city of Bangalore, never getting exposed to an Indian village till I went and stayed with the tribals, was a very confused identity. An identity where I was trained in Western medicine with no idea of Ayurveda. I had attempted to learn Sanskrit and completely protested learning it because my father forced me to learn it. Refused to believe in the rituals that my family was subjecting myself to follow. And in all this, I realized I had actually no identity. I had only borrowed identities. And you keep borrowing more, and I thought maybe only way to satisfy my intellectual ego was to acquire more degrees, what university educations can give you. Finally, I realized the policy is screwed up, so maybe the policy making has to be understood. Went to Kennedy School, degrees, fellowships. Then I thought maybe the leadership of the policy maker is messed up, so let me understand leadership. In frustration, I returned because I could never find answers to the quest I had, the questions I was getting. And I learned that my tribal leaders had much more traditional leadership. We used to call them Yajamanas. Their sense of leadership and understanding of the world was far different and far more advanced than what modern understanding of management and leadership could teach me. 15, 17 years ago, I thought, maybe I don't know, maybe I can regain my identity, and I started diving into. Luckily, I was privileged to have two gurus in my life. Swami Achalanji was not a monk of the order, but the order kept in the Ramakrishna order. We call it Diksha Guru, who gave me the Diksha to start me on the path. And every day I would sit with him, and he would explain the Gita, the Viveka Chudamani, the Atma Bolas, and different texts from a very spiritualistic perspective or from a very different, the quest perspective. To make things better for me, I'd call him a Vyavaharik Guru, the head of the local ashram at Mysore, an extraordinary Advaita, Swami Sureshananda, with whom I could have conversations where I could talk about societal problems. And I used to download my frustrations with him. The advantage having a guru is they don't have to speak. You only want somebody to hear you. And they know when to stay quiet and when to say the few words that will change your life completely. He was one of those, and while talking to him, I was talking about all that I was discovering in the Indian scriptures, which made such powerful sense from a leadership perspective. And my frustration was, I said, all of you monks don't understand this. You should talk of it in a leadership sense. More young people will come to you. And he said, that's not my job. My job is to tell you about Advaita. The rest is your problem. And he suggested I told him I want to write. Then I realized that I couldn't get a single exemplar that could capture all that I wanted to write. And in that frustration, again, I wrote another book called Leadership Lessons for Daily Living, which were a series of chapters. Each chapter was a standalone description of what we dismiss of as ordinary people, but extraordinary acts of leadership they were committing, from a street vendor to an auto driver to a self-help group woman to all kinds of people. And I explained to him that I think this is it. I have somehow put out all out there. I also wrote a chapter on the Prime Minister Modi from what I saw on television, the Chandrayaan episode and his hugging Shivan, the ISRO chairperson, and that what all of us saw that, and what I interpreted from it. He then told me, well, I think in the course of the conversation, he said, well, I still believe you can write a book, and you have to write something of a person who's in flesh and blood, which people can relate to. Now, we're talking about Aurobindo or Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Vivekananda. That's very nice, but they're all historical figures for us. You can't relate to them in the sense in which we can relate. It's very nice to talk of Ambedkar or Gandhi, because that's one proxy way of escaping our responsibility to emulate them. Put them on a pedestal, worship them, celebrate a Jayanti, and you're done with it. You can say, oh, well, I worship them. But living them is no easy job. And he said, why don't you write about somebody whom we can all imitate and try to emulate? And he suggested that, I don't know much about this, but a young man once came to our ashram at Rajkot, at Belur Mutt, wanted to join the order, and the Swamiji just sent him away saying, you're meant for something else, something more better and higher for this country. Just, you're not meant to be a monk. His name is Narendra Modi. He's the Chief Minister of Gujarat. Why don't you write about him? I said, well, I can't access him. I don't know about him. All I know is the newspaper and the television information we get, so I just gave up. 3 years ago, to cut a long story short, here I was as a member of the Capacity Building Commission, and gave me not only access, opportunities to see him and to interact with several of his close cabinet colleagues, several of the senior officers, and then started my research onto the person and see whether it matches what I discovered. So my team of young researchers, and it took us 2 years, long journey, and 32 iterations. The iterations is because I was unforgiving on myself, mainly because I knew, I had told myself I would never compromise my intellectual integrity, and I would be as objective as I can. And when you're very closely observing a person, where you're interacting with him, when you have anecdotes where you're bowled over by his personality, it's easy to get lost and become subjective. There's a big problem when you're very close to a person. You see only things that you want to see or you're shown to be seen. When you're too far away, you see all the other noise that's in between. So both are very difficult. So it was a constant challenge for me to keep myself as objective as I could, which I think I have been. To write a book which is not just for academicians. My research notes in this book itself is 50 pages. My glossary is under 30 pages. And those are just to satisfy my academic colleagues all over the world that this is serious work. But this is a book which is wide. I have not gone deep because there are 20 books hidden in it. One of my colleagues at Cornell told me each chapter is 5-6 PhDs, and possibly people have to do it because that's the only way you can build a body of knowledge. But more importantly, I think I have lived up to the 3 things that when I went and asked the permission of the Prime Minister to write, especially since it concerned him, I wanted first-hand information. He only said 3 things to me, which I think I have done. He said, first, this book is not about me, he said. So I can assure you this is not a hagiography. This is not a biography. He said this book has to be about Bharatiya leadership. And the outside world should understand that leadership is not something exported to us. It's something we can proudly give to the world as our Vishwaguru role. I think I've done that in as evidentially as possible. Because today, if we talk of anything about India, the danger is we romanticize and say, okay, we had aeroplanes 10,000 years ago, we had all that, we had plastic surgery, all that is great. But the way we present it, we dismiss it off because it looks too superficial. Or the other extreme, anything Indian has to be criticized. Or the other extreme is anything Indian has to be simply taken as great. We have had a rubbish also in the past. But I think a nation which cannot understand its civilizational strength, which cannot understand its past, can never build a great future. We are at that cusp, and I described that, the dilemma that Danny Roderick talks about, where you can't globalize, you can't be a democracy, and you can't grow economically. And I think India has disproved it. We have done all that today. The civilizational pride that we have, especially the last decade, is something to be felt. When you go outside the country, you really feel it. So this is a book which can stand up to that mandate given to me, that it can proudly talk about what is Indic leadership in a very evidential way. How is it different from the West? Why is it even necessary to write a book? The West celebrates being a leader, whereas India celebrates the exercise of leadership. The aham is not there in India. Transcending the I while exercising the act of leadership is India's greatest contribution to the leadership sciences. Whereas in the West, it's about get your identity only from your followers. If you don't have people behind you, you have no identity at all. And you constantly build that sense of I to such an extent that you can't live without it. For us, it is learning to live without it is a big sadhana. And that's something which struck me so powerfully. So I've described it. I don't want to give out too much of the book. I want you to read it. The second mandate, he said, was, after reading this book, 1,000 leaders for this country should emerge. It has been so widely received. It's been 40 days since the book has formally launched and available. It's already a national bestseller. It is crossed it's into its fourth reprint. It's published in the US, it's published in the UK, and there already my friends are telling me it's doing very well. So I think India's voice is getting heard. And what better exemplar than a flesh and blood example of a man who started his journey as a tea seller on a platform. Many of you might have had experiences in Delhi. We know the barriers to political growth in this country. The barriers are extraordinary. Negotiating those barriers, still holding on to your primary focus of life of seva, and making seva above the ultimate that you can live, and still holding on to it 50 years into public life is not an easy job. It's very easy for us, those on the outside, either to appreciate or criticize him. But to live it every day, I think you should try it for just one day, then you'll understand. Just living your life for the other. So I describe the leadership that I've written about as enlightened leadership, where I say leadership is about knowing yourself, that's Svadhyay, knowing others around you, and the enormous action that connects the self to the other. And the last I want to say is, what is the lesson for the rest of the world? The last chapter, I call it as the Dharma of legacy and the legacy of Dharma itself. I think India gave a call in the G20. The Honorable Prime Minister said, the 4 Ps is what is the way forward for the world itself. We need people. We have to invest on them. We all have to grow. We need a prosperity. Without that, we can't. Vivekananda said, you can't give Bhagavad Gita on an empty stomach. That's the reality of our life. The masses have to be fed, clothed, taken care of. You need the planet, because without the planet, where are we? So balancing ecology with economy is no easy task. Taking care of everything, at the same time doing it. And finally, you need peace. And the Indian way is the only way you can get these 4. And that's the way to be a Vishwaguru. In policy making, we say the greatest act of public leadership is balancing short-termism with long-termism. Friends, all of us know more than 60% of the world is either had or is having elections now. Every major democracy which has had elections except India, we are seeing already. We are seeing the way UK is going through. We are already worried. If you read the last issue of The Economist, it talks about the fears and worries of what the election results of the United States will throw up. Either way, how violence could be a norm of life for them. But look at India. We have actually set high standards. We just don't recognize it. And my view is, not a single world leader who's gone for elections has had the courage to actually make this balance. Nobody's had the courage except the Honorable Prime Minister to talk about 25 years from today, the Vikasit Bharat, long-termism. At the same time, he has to win in elections. The political economy of today means you have to be short-term in your thinking too. But this fine balance, this intricacy of taking care of it, it's not just a political balance. When you see him in life, the samatvam, the sthita pragnate that he shows, bringing in the farm law, withdrawing farm law, the same. Maybe if he had got 400 seats, I don't think it would have made any difference. Just because he got 240 seats, I don't think it makes any difference. And I'm sure I've not had the opportunity to ask him this question. He would simply say, as long as I have an opportunity to serve this country, that's all that matters. So I think my final request to all of you is please read the book, not because I wrote it, because India needs it. And if you cannot exercise the power within, I think reading the book will have no meaning at all to any of us. The world needs to be a better place. The world has to be a better place, and the time is now. I end with what Rabi Hilal said. If not now, then when? If not me, then who else? I think we have to ask this question to each of us. So please get the power within you expressed, because otherwise the power without is not going to save us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing the beautiful experience. I think we're all very lucky to be the first-hand witness of his amazing writing experience. So please give him a huge round of applause once again. And it's now time to call upon someone who is here, and it's a privilege to have him here. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge, huge round of applause for our chief guest, Mr. N. Chandrasekaran.
Good evening to all of you. Can be a little louder. Good evening to all of you. It's a great privilege and a unique honor to be this evening with all of you and share this wonderful platform. I think both the speakers who spoke before me were super eloquent. So it's going to be difficult to follow. But nevertheless, I thought I will share a few thoughts on this occasion. The book by Dr. Balasubramaniam, Power Within the Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi, is a wonderful book. I got a mail from him. The same day I got a WhatsApp message from Amit Chandra. Then a couple of messages from Nitin and someone else. I think maybe I did. First to write a blurb for this book. So then they sent me a short version. Then I said, can you send me the manuscript? So I would like to go through the book. Then I had the opportunity to read the manuscript. And I must say, business books are often very easy to read because you kind of flip the pages, you get the idea, then sometimes you can fast read. But a book like this, pretty serious book. And sometimes you have to read the same passages again. First, about the book. I think it's a very unique book for many reasons. I don't think there is one single place so much about leadership, I don't know, aspects, qualities, or traits from both, you call it Indian philosophy or Indic thinking, and on the other side from the modern global literature. All have been documented and brought together. Deep research has gone in. So I would resoundingly say that of the 3 points Dr. Balasubramaniam said that he had to do, the second one, which was about bringing the Indian philosophy of leadership, I think he has done full justice. So I must really congratulate Balu for this outstanding piece of work, because I think we have all read many books on leadership. There are books on leadership from Bhagavad Gita, leadership from some other ancient philosophy, leadership from so-and-so. Many things we have read, but I think bringing it all together in this form and analyzing it deeply and then trying to relate it to the person who is deeply discussed in the book, Narendra Modi is a remarkable thing to do. So it's a great book. I would say that everyone will benefit reading it. More importantly, it can be a good reference. So it's a book that needs to be there whenever you want to look at a particular aspect, because it will remind you once you have read it. So it took time for me to read this book. So all the more the reason I was delayed, and I got a couple of reminders from Amit. Where is the blurb? Deadline is approaching. I said, I'm still reading it. So the second thing I like about the book is that it celebrates the Indian wisdom on leadership. There is so much that is there in the Indian philosophy and wisdom, and we don't quote any of them in our normal lives. Many times they will talk about other philosophies. Nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, I think there is so much here that we need to learn and appreciate from. And so it actually celebrates the Indian wisdom on leadership. There are some very, very unique things that have been brought out in the book. So I really want to congratulate you, Dr. Balasubramanian, for this great piece of work. The other thing is, he has also brought about very insightful incidents and anecdotes from the extraordinary career and leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister's long tenure. And he kind of jumps around. He talks about Indian philosophy of leadership. Suddenly you read pages where there is a lot of quotes from different Indian philosophy. Then he goes to some modern leadership thoughts. Then he brings back to some real life situation with anecdotes on Narendra Modi. So it reads extremely well. And talking about Narendra Modi, I don't think there is much needs to be said. He is certainly one of the most respected, celebrated leaders globally of our times. There are many leadership qualities that you can talk about. I'll share a few later on from my own things that I have read in Indian system. But the important thing is the qualities like aspiration, the dream, to think about 2047 to be a developed nation, to empower every Indian, to raise the aspiration of every Indian. I've said it before. For me, the biggest achievement is Indians across the board don't feel diffident anymore. There is that aspiration, that urge, that can-do attitude, wanting to do more. That is there in all sections of the society. It's not business, it's not small business, big business, it's sports, it's across the board. So he has raised the aspiration of every Indian. And he dreams of an India where India will be a leader in all walks of life, all aspects of life. It's not only economy, it's not only sports, it's science, it's... So I have heard him say many times, "Kya humse nahi hoga kya?" Why can't we do it? Okay, so I think his vision for making India a developed nation exactly after a centenary, after independence, a bold and ambitious future. All of that, I think many of this is covered in the book in different words, not exactly in the same words that I'm saying, but also he has brought about examples of the transformation, many transformation, which all of us have witnessed, and many who have interacted with him know that he deeply believes in technology. He fundamentally believes that if India were to solve all her problems, it has to be done through technology. And the example that Balu has written in detail is about the Jandan account, Aadhaar mobile, Trinity, how it has created a huge inclusion. We know the success of UPI, and it's an envy of the world, developed and developing. And that has also resulted in many other platforms getting created. And I'm pretty sure the so-called India stack. So our digital stack is horizontal, but also we are building vertical stacks. They're like the health stack. So there will be other technology stacks that will evolve. And our data privacy solution that we have brought about is very unique. It is going to be immensely superior to every other market. So I think the use of technology will be very fundamental, and he saw that and he has been pushing it, and that is making a huge difference. Similarly, if you take indigenous telecom, so we are rolling out 5G now nationwide, completely India developed stack, our intellectual property. 6G research is going on. And needless to say, I think everyone believes, but some of us very deeply believe, semiconductor is going to be fundamental. These are visionary bets you have to take, because certain things you can catch up, certain things you cannot catch up. Then you have to wait for a gap for the next big thing to happen to catch up. And it has happened to us before. So now, making Indian semiconductor chip an interest party, because we're building the fab. So I don't want to talk more about it, but it's fundamental, it's very important. And it is happening. And also the book not only talks about all of this, but also gives examples of how his leadership is rooted in the service of the nation. Relentless. I mean, there are a lot of references to the qualities. One of them is hard work. And it's very difficult to keep pace. So there are many aspects that Balu has brought out in the book. And I can only say it's a very good articulation that you've done. Let me also say a couple of things which are keeping with the core theme of the book. which is the Indic philosophy of leadership. First is one very, very famous saying by Swami Vivekananda, which I think everyone will know. It is from the Katha Upanishad. Arise, awake, and stop, not till the goal is reached. So leadership is all about, the same thing has been said by many people. It has been said by Ayn Rand in Fountainhead, actually. Ayn Rand says it like, it is about, the leadership is all about the belief in an idea. Actually, leadership is about integrity, and integrity is about an idea. It is not about, integrity is not about not stealing from somebody's pocket. Then everybody is a leader. It is about staying with the idea until you persevere and persevere and persevere until the goal is reached. And it requires tenacity, perseverance, it requires courage, fearlessness, and I think these are things we can learn. And all of us who run, see, actually leadership is important for everybody. It's not necessarily a big leader, small leader, and wherever you are leading, these qualities are required. But my very favorite one is Thiruvallur, because the Tamil poet Thiruvallur, because I even today I have Thiruvallur's work everywhere, wherever I sit, or multiple copies, and I refer to Thiruvallur whenever I have doubts. And there are two couplets. Those of you who do not know Thiruvallur, Thiruvallur is a Tamil poet. His work is called Tirukkural, which is 133 chapters. Each chapter has 10 couplets. Each couplet is 7 words. So it's actually each couplet is less than 144 characters. So Thiruvallur is the first Twitter. And he gave himself 30 or 40 letters. He didn't use 144 characters. And each of these 133 chapters have 10 couplets. And each couplet is 7 words. So there is a chapter on each aspect of life. One of them is leadership. So I'm going to quote 2 of those couplets and try to explain a little bit and leave those thoughts with you and finish. The first one, I'm going to say it in Tamil, even though, except Ram, I can't see anyone else here who is going to understand it. But I'll translate. Anjamai, ஈகை, அறிவு, ஊக்கம், இந்நான்கும் எஞ்சாமை வேந்தற்கு இயல்பு. So essentially what it says is, he says a king should never fail on 4 things. One is fearlessness, and he goes on, there's a big commentary on this word, fearlessness. It is not about not being fearful. It's much, much more. That word, anjame, has a very different explanation. So fearlessness, empathy, wisdom, persistence. So any king should never fail on these 4. This is verse 383. There's a lot of explanation on this. So I'll leave that. The second one, if these 3 qualities are there, these 3 will never abandon a competent leader. Tungamai, Kalvi, Tunividamai. Immundrum Ninga Nilanal Pavarke. So basically what it means is vigilance or hard work, learning, lifelong learning, and an abundant boldness. If you have these three qualities, you are very unlikely to fail. So these are two of my very favorite couplets on leadership. I thought I'll share it with you. With those words, I would like to congratulate Dr. Balasubramaniam for his fantastic work, and also want to thank all of you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to be with you this evening. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, sir, once again for joining us. It's an honor and a privilege that you've joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a huge round of applause. And with an address like that, I think we're all set for the launch. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time we get ready for what we've been waiting for. It's time for the launch. And I would also like to invite our other guests on stage, starting with Shri Gaurang Das Prabhu. Please give him a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir, for joining us. It's an absolute privilege. Next up, I would like to invite on stage Dr. Swati Piramal. Please give her a huge round of applause. Next up, can we please have on stage Professor K. Rama Subramaniam, sir? Please, round of applause. I would also like to invite Mr. Deepak Sood, Secretary General, ASSOCHAM, to join us for the launch, please. Also, I would like to invite Mr. Zaka Jacob to please join us for the launch. Please give him a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, 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 check. Hello, hello. Everyone, we're all set for the launch. Everyone, can you please lift your books up? Come on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Power Within, the leadership legacy of Narendra Modi. Give it up. Please give a huge round of applause for the author, Mr. R. Balasubramaniam. Thank you to all our guests for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been such a great inauguration panel. Can we please have a huge round of applause for each and every one of our guests? All right, I think sir is leaving us, our chief guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mr. N. Chandrasekaran, please. Thank you for joining us, sir, once again. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a panel discussion coming up. I request all of you all to please take your seats. Please. Everyone, it's time we take our seats. Come on. Please do the honor. Which one? On that side? Yeah, please, we have 5. I think you have to talk to somebody from Association. I'm just the MC.
Already signed. Second page, you open a page. And I will know that
Hello, everyone. Everyone, please take your seats now. I think we're all set for the panel discussion. Everyone, please take your seats. All right. Everybody here, come on, please take your seats. We're all set to start the panel discussion. Everybody on the aisle area, please, sir, please have your seat. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, we can close the gates now. Everyone, please be seated. We're closing the gates now. All right. Everyone, it's time we start the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a great inaugural session, and now we'll get to know more about the book and about the wonderful panelists that we have here. I do not need to introduce them. They're all very famous, very popular, and it's a privilege and an honor to have all of you all here. Please give a huge round of applause for all our panelists. So we have Shri Gaurang Das Prabhu. Please give a huge round of applause. Dr. Swati Piramal. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Professor K. Rama Subramaniam. Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan, give it up. Our author, Dr. Bala Subramaniam. And our moderator for this panel discussion, Mr. Zaka Jacob. Please give him a huge round of applause. Mr. Zaka, I request you to please start the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. It is to Dr. Balu's credit that he's managed to pack not just one, but 3 halls full of people. So congratulations, Dr. Balu. Let me start off by asking you, obviously, through this book, the one thing that stood out for me when I read it, The Power Within, The Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi, was your constant back and forth, your references to Indian books, seminal works, scriptures, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and even using things like Panchatantra and the Jataka tales. Why did you sort of base the foundation of this book on Indian scholarly works and Indian scripture, as it were, in a reference to leadership?
I think that's a great question, a great way to begin. Most of the time when we look at leadership, we always appreciate it as something which, and that's possibly a product of a colonization and the way we have lost our own ability to think for ourselves at a period of time. We see the scriptures as something, it's only for a spiritual journey. And in my research, I realized possibly leadership in a truly selfless way. The journey of leadership is possibly the greatest sadhana a person can do, as long as it is niswarth, or selfless. And along with that, I found that there are 2 ways of looking at it. Spirituality's greatest expression for the benefit of mankind is leadership. And leadership journey itself is a spiritual discipline. And this can only be appreciated when you look at it from the Indic scriptural lens. Because Western civilizations talks about and I'll actually explain why I called it power within in that same context, is it talks about the power without. And there's a great book by Archie Brown, he talks about the myth of a strong leader. And I realize that when he says it's a myth, that's because he looks at nobody can consistently have power over others outside. So this power over outsiders beyond ourselves is what is celebrated in the West. And whereas Kautilya in his Arthashastra talks about Indriya Vijayi and Indriya Nigraha, and all the scriptures only talk about control of the senses, and all that is power within. So that's when I realized that this is possibly the most sensible explanation for leadership itself, leadership action itself, and this has to be presented in a way in which it's appreciated. So if you notice in my book, I'm not trying to say the Western models are inadequate or it's incomplete. I'm only trying to say this is the limited appreciation of leadership from a Western cultural context where individualism is celebrated, but whereas in the Indian civilizational cultural context, that's inadequate to explain to us. And therefore, it has to be presented in a way which we can talk about it.
I do want to ask you about that. I guess leadership is perhaps the most written about subject, right? Everybody has written about leadership from George Washington to Abraham Lincoln to Churchill, and of course, the business leadership part I'm not even getting into, like the likes of Jack Welch and now Steve Jobs and so on. So when you decided that you had to write a book like this talking about the Indic way of leadership, tell us, and I think you mentioned that in your speech as well, the Western idea of leadership is about certain qualities, your ability to inspire, your ability to lead, whereas the Indic form of leadership is about the exercise of the authority, as you said it. What is different, and didn't you feel at any point while you were writing this book that this may become inadequate to the extent that this is completely counterintuitive to what the West has said about what are the ideas of leadership or what are the traits of leadership?
Again, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you actually read the book, you'll appreciate that it's just the inability to explain the intuitiveness of what I'm talking was a problem. I always believed that the toolkit that the West had in appreciating all these concepts was an incomplete civilizational background that they might have had in their own context, like wherever you look at it, whether you look at the European context or the American context. And the greatest civilizational strength that we have, where we not only could look at talking about the external sciences, from algebra to trigonometry to calculus to metallurgy to chemistry, we could control external nature. But deep inside, we realize that just only the manifestation and not the intent. The real intent comes from a control of internal nature. And this distinction has to be really appreciated in the context of leadership. And therefore, my sense was, today increasingly, why are people looking towards India? Is this fascinating journey of positive psychology, science of happiness, all that they're talking about today is exactly what we have described for centuries. I realize that the world is coming around, and they have to appreciate that it is not there. They might have models of research to explain this, but this knowledge is ancient. And how do you present it in a way in which it's not dismissed off as another native ranting, but something which is founded on solid thinking of a lot of people. We also in our country, we use the word rishi, we automatically equate them only to a spiritual person. But a rishi was a scientist too. He was a deep thinker, a philosopher in so many different ways. Capturing that knowledge, capturing that wisdom, presenting it as evidentially as possible, and comparing it to modern thinking, whereas the modernists will not dismiss it off. The reason why I bring in so much of Western literature also, one is because I was trained in it, I could talk about it authoritatively. And second, because the inadequacy of the training that I received also gives me the authority to talk about it. And therefore, I said, I'm not dismissive, but I'm only trying to present a view that the completeness, the purnata can come only when you combine everything. Like Gandhi said, we are not shutting our doors and windows to anything coming from outside. But the problem with India is when all that wind blew through us, it took away our wind also. All I have tried to do is bring back our wind into the room.
Okay, it's a nice way of bringing the wind back into the room. So let me start with our panelists. I'll start with Dr. Piramal at my far right. You talked about this earlier as well, about if you look at the leadership style of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the 3 Fs, future, female, you also mentioned about technology. So in your daily work and in your interactions that you've had with the Prime Minister, how does he emphasize on these 3 things? If there is let's say, an anecdote that you can share with our audiences here as to how he brings the best of technology, the importance of women and women-led development, women-led growth, and of course, like you said, taking India to the future, through the Indic form of leadership or the way of leadership.
Thank you, Zaka. So I feel that the book reminds me of an iceberg, because what you see about Narendra Modi is what the 9 o'clock news talks about. But what you don't see is below that iceberg. And understanding that is something that Balu has done so well to explain where it came from, where that leadership came from. So one of my first F's was about the future. And I think it can't be better example than COVID-19, the pandemic. And I do remember when people were dying like flies, we didn't know what was going on. Even the best doctors, even the best specialists didn't know. And I remember that time that our foundation, the Piramal Foundation, decided to focus on the elderly because they were dying the most. And that was the Nana Nani or Dada Dadi Suraksha Abhiyan. The Prime Minister would call civil society along with his government to look at himself to understand what the scientists were saying. He would listen deeply. And if you think about it, his reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic was much better than those of many other countries in the world, including China. And perhaps our economy owes it to that decision to make sure that we have the best scientific knowledge inside his cabin, where he talks about vaccination, where he talks about protecting the elderly. And I know that he deeply, deeply listened. When I was just a young doctor, I had gone to Gujarat, where he was the chief minister. And I talked about anemia, I talked about women dying in maternal mortality, infant mortality, unacceptable to that level that we have in the world. And after I finished speaking, he actually didn't walk out like most ministers would walk out after they finished speaking. But who's going to listen to the panelists? But he stayed there and he said, Swati Ben in Gujarati, tame kesho e karish. So he actually did it. It was the first time that institutional delivery took place. And look at what Gujarat did, and then became the forerunner of saving many, many, many women and children. So it's an example.
All right. Gaurangdas Prabhuji, whenever we talk about Indian leadership, and Dr. Balu mentions this in his book, he mentioned this earlier as well, about there's a sense of selflessness, there's a sense of renunciation, whether it is Ramakrishna Paramhansa, whether it's Swami Vivekananda, even Mahatma Gandhi. There is a sense of renunciation associated. With Prime Minister Modi, again, he's deeply sort of enmeshed with the Ramakrishna Math and the way of living, deeply inspired by Swami Vivekananda. In the modern day context, when, as Dr. Balu said, you have this framework of a Western leadership, how do you bring in this concept of renunciation or spiritually guided leadership? Where does it fit in the context of Prime Minister Modi?
Thank you very much, Zaka, and thanks for inviting me for this wonderful session. I joined, the spiritual path as a monk, passing out from IIT Mumbai in 1993. So I have a professor from my college here and my hostel mate, Ashish Chauhan, sitting here. And this is the last place I imagine we'll meet. So I must say that to have a prime minister who is so spiritually inclined in itself is a great privilege. And the four aspects which I can see from Prime Minister Modi's leadership and how it reflects the ethos of spirituality-based leadership is, first is purity in proclivity, because intentions can be at four levels: fear, desire, duty, and love. And as you can see beautifully brought out in this book, the sense of seva, because spirituality is all about beginning with sakshatkar, understanding the self, then achar vichar, when you interact with others, and then actually is the real principle of Paropkar. So therefore, purity in proclivity is the foundation. Based on that, the second principle is stability in identity. Because many people wonder why you need temples, and Prime Minister Modi has been at the forefront of not only encouraging opening of temples, but also being there for the Pran Pratishtha, performing all the rituals which all of us, we would expect us to do, but we would not expect a Prime Minister to do. So it's extremely impressive. People ask us, why do you need temples? I say India has 70,000 hospitals, but almost 2 million temples. So temple is a hospital for the mind. And therefore, the greatest anxiety people face in this world, the greatest challenge people face is fear. And fear is caused due to change. And in fact, this stability in identity is so important because, especially as a political leader, we are living in a very, very volatile world. And, you know, as Ashish would recollect, we are in hostel, and so many incidents of suicides are becoming common. How I came to this process of understanding the Gita and taking Gita seriously is one of my friends who was a topper. He attempted to commit suicide, and he survived. And when I asked him, why did you try to commit suicide? He said, I was always getting the gold medal. This time I got the silver medal I couldn't handle. The change in identity. And in the same exam, 4 or 5 of my other friends failed in 3-4 subjects. They were moving around the campus peacefully, blissfully, blessing others as if nothing happened. And when I asked them, what is your philosophy? And they said, our philosophy is simple. College mein ghusna apna kaam hai, nikalna college ka kaam hai. So, what I see in Prime Minister Modi is he may be the Prime Minister, but I've never heard anyone come out in the open and say, I am the Pradhan Sevak, which is the core identity which is carrying. And when there is purity in proclivity, stability in identity, then the third and most important principle is you have flexibility in your activity. It doesn't matter which kind of activity may work, may not work, but you are flexible to change your strategy because you know your goal is very clear. And when there is flexibility in your activity, on top of that, you have clarity in your publicity, the way he can communicate and bring everyone together, understand this is the way we have to move forward. And in a country like India with its diversity, it's something astonishing. Therefore, parents are all talking about how to make our kids successful. But I think it's a great example from Prime Minister Modi that the Vedic education was based on 3 things. First is Vivek, which is discrimination. Second, Vairagya, which is renunciation. And third was Vinay, which is humility. And when the person actually gets Vinay, then it is called Vijay or success. That is the Vedic paradigm.
Thank you very much. You couldn't have put it more articulately and more succinctly about the 4 V's, as it were. But let me ask Ashish Kumar Chauhan, just in the real world, in a world where we are dealing with technology and technology is making all the real difference, how does the Indic leadership philosophy fit in with that? On the one hand, you're talking about the Vedas, you're talking about Vivek, and eventually leading to Vijay. But at the same time, the same land, the same country produces the Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, as was referred to by Mr. Chandra. The same country produces the UPI. We have tens of millions who we need to make financially inclusive. How does one marry both of this? Our inherent centuries-old wisdom, but at the same time, the need to make this a modern-day developed Viksit Bharat.
In a way, I think we have seen in his example itself that he is firmly rooted in the Indic framework, as all the previous speakers said, but he's also one of the most astute users of technology. If you look back, I think 2014, even 13, he used to use, even before that, the projections, the 3D projections for his public meetings instead of sometimes going there. And I mean, I've seen him for now literally 24 years. He is one of the most astute person who understands technology inherently and knows that if India has to bring back what it has lost, that is the prominence and preeminence, it has to use the modern methodologies, modern technologies. And somewhere on the line, if you have to also become richer before we become old, then technology is the way to do that. Otherwise, other countries have taken longer time to go into that direction. That's where UPI or anything to do with technology, whether satellite failure or satellite success or using the technology for even doing some sort of an attack on enemies, everything. I mean, he would not rule out a framework at all. Like once he visited Bombay Stock Exchange, that time I was in BSc. He was just the Chief Minister of Gujarat. And I happened to be abroad, but when I realized that Gujarat CM is coming to BSc, so I kind of landed the same day and went to office straight from airport. And I was showing him around, and he said, "You are talking in Gujarati, are you a Gujarati?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he said many things, but he said, "I need one work from you. Can you set up a modern exchange in Gift City?" And I said, "Okay, I mean, I have set up exchanges and run them all my life, so be it. We will do it in Gift City also, provided we get approvals." And the way he goes through the processes, he also became Prime Minister later on. He remembered that called this guy for Vibrant Gujarat. He got that me to sign up. And 2017, he came to personally inaugurate that exchange, which was completely automated. But interestingly, I had no approval to actually launch the contracts. So on the day of the launch, he was sitting on the stage, and I went to sort of give him a hammer to launch. And at the end, after launching, he said, "Boss, where is your trading?" And broadly speaking, he has not traded, right? So I said, "No, sir, I will do trading next week," because in Gujarat, there is I had to figure out some reasons. I said, after Uttarayan in Gujarat, we do things after 14 January, not before that. So I said, today is 9 January, next week I'll start. And so he understood that I was in a problem. And so he called the Minister of Finance for State sitting next. He said, "Okay, come here." He called the SEBI chairman. He said, 16th of January, Monday, you will come here and inaugurate this. Trading, you will place the order yourself and then call me from there. So he had an ability to think through on the run, saying that this boy has set up this exchange, does not have approval to launch. He has got me to inaugurate, but now what to do? And 16 January at 9 o'clock, he called Mr. Arjun Ram Meghwal saying, "Have you placed the order?" He said, "Yes, sir." And then he had to go back. So he has some amazing capabilities. Today also, when I would meet him, he will first ask in Gujarat, he would say, "What happened to your this person, that person?" And so somewhere, he would be meeting literally lots of people, and to remember your name, to remember your connect, out of nowhere, he wouldn't even know that he's going to meet me today. But he will have, and so for me, there are so many such anecdotes all of us will have, but his ability to connect to the technology, to intuitively understand, use it for betterment of the people, and that doesn't come only from using the technology. The other part, which is making everything into a mass movement, like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, was a phenomenal thing. Although all of us complain, we talk all the time in private, but when Slumdog Millionaire comes, all of us think that it's an affront to us and it's an attack on our dignity and stuff. But he's the first, probably the only Prime Minister who said, "Okay, we need to have toilets in the house." And then he made it into a sort of a mass movement. I think after Gandhi, there is nobody better who is able to understand people's needs and then convert into a mass movement to ensure that it is implemented. So it's one side is the technology, other side is figuring out what people need, and then these are simple things, and we think it's a solved problem, but no, it's not. And so he ends up doing it, right? So
Great anecdote about the gift city trading, which which we shall remember. But even if I were to extend this in the realm of culture and civilization, Professor Ramasubramaniam, it is one thing to use culture and civilization, India's historic past, the Indic philosophy of leadership, but it's another thing to be able to make that relatable to ordinary masses. So whether it is popularizing International Yoga Day. Yoga has been in existence for centuries now, but it took Narendra Modi to popularize it and make June 21st International Yoga Day. To install the Sengol in the new Parliament building. Again, people had not heard of this, but he was marrying India's ancient cultural heritage with a relatable way in which people can understand. How easy or difficult is that challenge, and how successful you reckon the Prime Minister has been in these various aspects of marrying India's rich heritage with everyday sort of relatable examples for people?
See, one very, very striking feature about Narendra Modi, I have to disagree with Valu before I say anything. So he was saying that I am not saying that the leadership qualities which have been explored in other textbooks are not insufficient to be an extraordinary leader. There is one thing which I think still is missing, which is the spirituality. So I strongly believe there is a very interesting statement that he has made, and this quality is, I would just put it in this way. See, Tyaja, Vraja, Bhaja, and Yaja. Okay? So Tyaja is something which is not found anywhere. So Tyaja, Tyage Naike Amrtatvam Anashuhu is what we say. So this Tyaja quality, so which he extraordinarily demonstrated at the age of 16, I would just say. So that is beautifully narrated by Balu. So you leave Tyaja, and then Vraja, you march. So it is this which has enabled Narendra Modi to reach out people. Vraja, and Vraja in search of serving people. Okay? Tyaja, Vraja, and then Bhaja. So this is something which I feel, so he has beautifully done. So Bhaja is, so embrace something. Embrace this Deshabhimana which you are trying to tell me. So that we need to promote our country by highlighting, which has been extraordinarily done by him. Okay? This Bhaja is just embrace your own thing. And there are very brilliant things which have been done by him. And ultimately, Yaja is sacrifice. Sacrifice everything. Okay? So these are the four things that he has brilliantly done. And these qualities, if they are present, and only one thing which I want to tell, this is something which really touched me about this Modi. So in 2019, I remember this verse everybody has to know. And if anybody who possesses, he would be an extraordinary leader, and which Balu has said as enlightened leader. This only quality is, I once again say, this Tyaja aspect. So, Natvaham Kamaye Rajyam Naswargam Napunarbhavam Kamaye Dukhataptanam Praninam Arti Nashanam. This is what he said. I was touched by this. I never knew this verse, though I have been reading Sanskrit literature for 30 years, 40 years. And this is in 2019 when he was just provoked by somebody. What is it that you expect? Thinking that he may say, once again, Rajyam. So he said, I don't seek for sovereignty, Rajyam. Natvaham Kamaye Rajyam. Naswargam, pleasure, happiness. Na apunarbhavam, even if it were to be eternal salvation for me, I don't seek. What do you seek? He says, Kamaye dukkha taptanam praninam arti nashanam. The only thing that I seek for is to serve people who are in affliction. Okay, that is the only thing that he said. Dukkha taptanam praninam, for every being, arti nashanam. This arti, as we were saying, this can be a diffidence that we have in nation. This arti is of multiple types. It is mental agony ultimately. Okay, arti nashanam is the only thing that I want, and that is the drive that he had, and which made him leave the family, Tyaja, and then he went, and then he embraced the most important philosophy of serving people at the cost of everything. Okay? So this is what has made him, and this quality, that Tyagaya, I don't think any other leadership framework is highlighting, and this is what forms the basis of what he is today.
All right. I do want to go back to Dr. Balu. The one measure for any successful leader, particularly in a democracy, is to be able to relate with different sections of society, whether they are business leaders or scientists at ISRO or sports persons or even construction laborers for that matter. You have a chapter called Leading with Soul, where you talk about how the Prime Minister, when he hugged Dr. Sivan, the ISRO chairman, when the Chandrayaan-2 failed, it was spontaneous. It was not a put-on act. Similarly, when Vikram lander landed successfully, he went there and congratulated the scientists. He spoke to Olympians just yesterday. And again, the ability to relate to what they go through. And to me, what happened last year, speaking to those 41 laborers who were stuck inside a tunnel, and to be able to relate to what they went through. How is he able to personalize, no matter who he is speaking to, whether it's a business leader, ISRO scientist, or a construction laborer?
I think we need to appreciate the drive that he's got and the training in his own way that he has developed over time. That's the greatest learning I had in observing 50 years of his life. 17 to 19 is a time when he was on his own personal journey. And that's something which he said, though I discovered a few things, he said that's something so intensely personal that it better be kept personal, he said. So that's why I wouldn't have described much of it. He's just saying he went around, he went to monasteries, he went to the Himalayas, all that is true. But most of the public domain information is post-19. And the advantage that he had is that he had different roles that he performed. One, right from a Bala Sevak in the RSS, then an active Pracharak later on, then an organizing secretary to the BJP, to chief minister to prime minister. But the biggest growth and development of his in terms of connectedness that I write about and the rootedness was as a RSS Pracharak. Now, the life of a RSS Pracharak, many of us here would know, some of us would not know, is that they're entirely driven by society and societal requirements, to the point where they're actually more monastic than monks. They don't marry, they don't have any possessions or belongings. They go to houses which are inviting them. They have lunch in somebody's house, dinner in somebody else's house, and then they give the bus charge, they go to the next place. They're completely devoted and dedicated to the context of building this nation. But in that process of journeying around, and they get posted to different locations. It's like a bureaucrat getting posted to different places. So he could learn right from Himachal to Tamil Nadu to Karnataka to Gujarat. When you go around as a pracharak and different places, you have biotechs where you discuss things. You actually meet people. And that is significant because today if somebody from his past meets him, they immediately will say, that man with the thick mustache, that fellow's house, that roti used to be very good. Are they still making the roti the same way? That connectedness where he could live like ordinary people. At the same time, RSS Pracharaks are not just living with the masses. They also move and interact with monks, with businessmen, with all kinds of levels of scientists. Whoever they think is building and contributing towards the nation, they build an engagement with them. So I think this extraordinary sense of connectedness. The second thing which I noticed, which really gets him to relate to people, is he understands that India, though it's diverse, the connecting thread is civilizational. And he uses it in every forum that he can, in different ways. If you noticed, I even write extensively on the pagadi, the turban, right? Every Independence Day has been a different turban. The media is only projecting the colors of the turban. But the significance behind this turban, I've explained in detail. Where does it come from? How does he relate to it? To wearing a dhoti in some place, to wearing a white-colored dhoti in a particular place, to angavastra in a particular way, they're all symbols of a particular cultural sentiment that comes from Indian rootedness, and he can connect to it. So he's not pretending, he can connect. So the lived experience of being poor to engaging with the prosperous people is a huge learning exercise. I think along with that, his understanding of ability to communicate, and I describe it in the Sadharanikaran model, and I also give Western models. The biggest strength of his communication is not his deep listening. I also write about deep listening. But beyond that is what I call about Saharidayata. Where he doesn't just communicate words, he actually communicates by relating at the deep sense of oneness of the ekatvam that Bhagavad Gita describes. He actually lives that. In that space of emotional oneness, a deep sense of connectedness comes in. And that is what he's capable of. So when he's having the child in Wayanad, I don't know how many of us saw that, the way he was fondling the child. And you can exactly have the same sense of emotion that flows out of him when he was carrying the child of Jasprit Bumrah, right? That grandfatherly, tender love, that feminine love that can flow out, that is the Saharidayata he can strike. And that is where the connectedness comes from. And it happens at every level for him.
I do want to ask Dr. Swati, arguably one of the biggest challenges that the world has faced, and clearly India has faced, is the COVID-19 pandemic. And you mentioned this in your first answer as well. How, at the start of the pandemic, people were saying India with 1 billion plus people, there'll be bodies floating around and people will be dying like flies. How did India navigate that from the context of the Indic leadership and Indic philosophy, preparing early, ensuring that people have necessary mechanisms to deal with the consequences of this disease, preparing at scale? At the end of the day, in a country as big as ours and as populous as ours, it doesn't matter. You can have a great idea and great preparation for one city, but how do you scale up? From a health professional's point of view, how did that change your perspective to Prime Minister's leadership, and how did the rest of the world then look at India and what India was doing?
Thank you, Zaka. I note with some amusement that when I'm on the board of a foreign company and they all ask me what is the secret of Prime Minister's leadership, I tell them about the G20 photograph. It used to be that the Prime Minister of India was always at the side. Today, he's in the center of the world or in leadership. And I think he did this in the COVID-19 pandemic, using technology, using the help of civil society, in fact, using what I call feminine love, what Dr. Balu just said, that using that idea of children of India and really protecting them. I'd like to give you one small example. More recently, I took 25 of our best medical students to Palghar. And in Palghar, there's anemia, and there's something called ashram shalas. Ashram shalas are a place where children live and they study, like Gurukul in the old days, except that it is the most unprofessionally run place, as well as unprofessionally run in healthcare. And there I saw this child who was reading a book, and she said she was stunted, 10th standard, a tribal child. One day life will change. And I think that paradigm is what he's thinking about. One day life will change for the children of India. One day life will change for the women of India. And if you ask me, he's more feminine than most men because he looks for the Indian woman. He was the first to look at Vinesh Fogart and say, I'm sorry you lost. He was the first to talk about the Indian hockey team. He was the first today morning to profess the greatest grief and pain at what's happening in Kolkata with a young medical student. That is his relationship with feminine power, female power, caring power, nurturing power, which really was very well seen in the COVID-19 pandemic. It wasn't there in China. Imagine China lost its economic scale because they didn't listen to the scientists. They just did what they wanted. And sadly, that was true of Europe and in many parts of America, where they didn't even want to take the vaccine. Whereas he did, he listened to scientists. And to me, that was the greatest example in healthcare, really bringing our nation up to speed in its economy.
Thank you. Gaurang ji, you know, one of the qualities you expect in a leader is a sense of equanimity. And Dr. Balu's mentioned this in his book about one of the great challenges that the Prime Minister faced was around the farm laws. And he said in his speech as well that he brought it in with a certain vision, he couldn't pass it through, but even when he withdrew it, he had the same sense of equanimity about it. He said this in his speech as well, whether he got 350 or whether he got 240, he would have the same sense of equanimity because ultimately it's about serving the people. How do you see this in the context of the Prime Minister, that no matter what happens, and we're living through a pretty tumultuous time, we have 2 wars going on. One of the speakers talked about, 60 elections are happening in 2024, and we're seeing the tumult that the rest of the world is going through. How does a leader maintain that sense of equanimity?
Thank you, Zaka, for that question. It's not possible to develop overnight, and it's not possible to fake it also. So we should realize that, as described by Balu in the book, it begins with first samarpan. Samarpan means you're dedicating yourself to some serious sadhana. And I'm sure, Prime Minister is dedicated to spiritual practice for many, many years. And once there is samarpan, then there is samman. Then you have respect for all the various spiritual principles. There is a higher power, and we are ultimately a trustee. When there is samarpan and samman, then you begin the process of seva. And as described in the book beautifully, and as we have seen, the core principle of service to the last mile, Antyodaya, has always been a repeated theme. And when a person considers oneself to be a sevak, and as Swatiji has mentioned about how always recognizing what people are contributing and acknowledging that, then there is a development of sneha, or genuine affection. And when that feeling of affection is there, then you consider Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the entire world is our family. And based on that, the last most important principle is Sima, knowing our limits. And that has been a hallmark of India, because very few people are actually able to understand India. And I think, as Krishna says in Gita, that evam parampara praptam imam rajarishyo vidu. This knowledge of spirituality was meant for the Rajarishis. And as Balu has beautifully mentioned, that this is an example of a Rajarishi who begins with self-restraint. Today, one of the biggest challenges in the world is food waste. Almost 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted. The food waste in US, UK, and Europe together can feed 1 billion people. So here is Prime Minister who does complete fast for 9 days, and it is a great solution to food waste because he's totally restrained himself. So I feel that the way he understands India, very few people have understood. Like a couple of my friends from America, when they visited India, I took them to IIT Kharagpur. When we landed in Kolkata, we heard it's a Bengal Bandh. So I thought the program is cancelled. But the organizer's program is on. I said, how will go to Kharagpur? It's a 3-hour drive. They said, we have come to pick you up in an ambulance. I said, ambulance? And I was sitting in front. My friends were in the back from America. They had taken breakfast. And suddenly someone stopped and said, I want to see who's behind. And I said, go and check. When they looked behind, they saw my 2 friends from America, after having breakfast with garlands around their neck, were sleeping peacefully. And they said, Inki Atma ko Shanti mile. So therefore, I have never heard a Prime Minister from the ramparts of the Red Fort speaking about basic civic sense, cleanliness, and launching Swachh Bharat. And we could understand that, yes, here is a person who understands that only 4% of India has corporate jobs and 3% of India has government jobs, but 93% of India is actually in the informal sector. And India needs someone who understands their heart, understands their soul, and can reach out to them as a friend.
All right. I hope you heard back from your American friends. We've got the last couple of questions, 5 minutes to wrap up. So Mr. Chauhan and then Professor Ram Subramaniam. So there's a chapter in Dr. Balu's book called Artful Mastery, where he describes, Mr. Chauhan, this meeting between Pulela Gopichand, the badminton legend, and the Prime Minister, and how the Prime Minister was mostly just listening to what Mr. Gopichand had to say. Now, it is said that generally leaders who are skillful orators, and obviously the Prime Minister is one of the very best, are not necessarily great listeners. In your experiences, Mr. Chauhan, in terms of being able to listen to a problem and then to address that problem, what has your experience been, and how does he marry both of this? Both the ability to orate and inspire and to hold an audience together, and at the same time, to be able to listen to each individual from that audience and address their concerns, whatever that might be.
It's an interesting situation where I think it's easy to orate. It's very difficult to listen. And even usually if we sit every few seconds or few minutes, depending on what's happening, you will go and look at your mobile, right? Nobody in the modern world does have an attention syndrome. We don't give attention. But the person who is being talked about, Mr. Modi, if he gives you 45 minutes, nobody will come and disturb you or him. Nobody will give him one chitti. He will not look at it. 45 minutes he will listen to you. Only last few minutes, he will summarize the way he understood, right? So there is, I have not seen, it's not one experience, but literally many, many people who have talked to him. So it's not only me, but whoever has gone, whatever time, like he said, 7.5 minutes goes to 15 minutes for Gopichand. But if he gives you 45 minutes, it'll be full 45 minutes, not 1 second less. And it'll be full attention. No saying you are sitting for 45 minutes, but he's thinking something else. No, he's giving you full attention. And that's a very, very strange thing. Just on COVID part, because if I don't say this, I would kind of be missing out also this audience, that he created a framework of food, free distribution of food. That's pretty much the greatest achievement of modern India. When I was young, I used to always hear and read in newspapers that people are dying in Kalahandi of hunger and things like that in 1970s and even up to early 80s. We have become rich enough. I didn't even think in my life that we will ever become rich enough to feed all our people. Today, 80 crore people are, even during COVID, we sort of fed them. But during COVID, it's a very tough time. We had to actually run trains, non-stop trains across India and things like that. But he understood the context. And today, we have become rich enough that 80 crore is actually larger than entire Europe, America, Canada, Mexico, and few other countries combined, right? And many people tell me that we have become so poor that 80 crore people are dependent on free food. No. Even America, after having 33 times more per capita income, still, or now 22 times, still have literally 10-15% people running on food coupons, which is actually given free food in addition to everything else. So effectively, we have removed the, what we call abject poverty by just one single framework. And that is something, the other part is, we closed down ourselves. We were the first country to close down fully. China also closed down only Wuhan at that point in time. We closed down the entire country, I think it was 23rd March on 2020. And then all of us had two problems. One is, how will people eat? As he said, I think Gaurang Prabhu said, a lot of people first earn and then eat because everyone is in informal sector. And so he managed this food part. The second part is that how we will manage the rest of the world, because most of the countries are being run now out of India. All the GCCs, that is Global Capacity Centers and all, they are basically run out of India. And if we fail them today, because we have closed down, then nobody will come back to us to give us the contracts. And not only India ran itself well, also it gave two doses of COVID vaccine to everyone, but also it ran the world well. No portions of the world went without, the McDonald's worked, or the supermarkets worked, the banks worked across the world, is because of India and the way the government actually worked. Most of us keep on blaming the governments all our lives, but those days, the people who worked, and actually, I appreciate NGOs, they work very well, but this could not have been done by NGOs at all.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll give the final word to Professor Ram Subramaniam very briefly because we are over time now. In one of the chapters, Dr. Balu talks about inspiring change and igniting hope. And he quotes the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, Dr. P.K. Mishra, about the criteria that the Prime Minister has in choosing his bureaucrats, in choosing his team. So there are three criteria. Obviously, one is absolute integrity, the ability to work in a team, and the willingness to embrace technology. It is often said that you can judge a leader by the team he keeps. It's almost like, judge a person by the friends he keeps. How is Prime Minister Modi empowering his team? Because he's the first one to admit this, that he's not some, genius or magician who has a magic wand in his hand and can solve all of India's problems. It's the team that has done this or created the foundation, the benchmark to do this. How is a leader judged by that?
See, there is one important quality that is expected, which is Atmaupamyena Sarvatra. So when you are trying to look at the other person and try to choose, so you have to be extremely careful, but then this larger vision that he had, that Atmaupamyena Sarvatra Samam Pashyati. So the samam pashyati is something which is very important. So you have to have this integrity. Now this integrity that he is trying to expect of them is absolutely impossible provided he does not completely fulfill it. So this is a very beautiful, so you were just mentioning about this Balu's thing. I found one of the most important quotation that he has given from Arthashastra, which I find in page 241. So this summarizes beautifully. This is something which Narendra Modi has completely absorbed in him. Sukhasya moolam dharmaha, dharmasya moolam arthaha, arthasya moolam rajyam, rajyasya moolam. See, sukhasya moolam dharmaha. Sukhasya moolam arthaha no. Okay. Sukhasya moolam dharmaha. Dharmasya moolam arthaha. It is very important. That is why he keeps talking about this economy, and we want it to be a developed country. It is because of this. So this dharmasya moolam arthaha. But arthasya moolam, unless you have a good governance, rajyam, it is not possible. So that is why he is just trying to just choose. So arthasya moolam rajyam. Rajyasya moolam. So then he says, Rajyasya moolam Indriya Jayaha. This is Indriya Jaya, the most important thing. See, in fact, the last question that he was asking, artful mastery, it is only because of this, Indriya Jayaha. He is able to control his mind to listen carefully. So this Indriya Jayaha is the most important thing. Rajyasya moolam Indriya Jayaha. Indriya Jayasya moolam, this is a beautiful passage, you have to read this. So Indriya Jayasya moolam Vinayaha. Vinayaha is so trying to listen to others carefully with a certain humble attitude that we can learn from the other person. So Vinayaha. So then he says, Vinayasya moolam, how will you acquire this ability? Vruddhopaseva. So this Vruddhopaseva is what he did even at the age of 16. He went to Atma. So 2 years he went all around seeking that. See, there is one beautiful sentence which I found in the author's note. He said, so this nicely captures, so he says, spirituality is which entails, that's a beautiful word he uses, spirituality entails. So, yeah, author's preface he has written, just only one word I want to just say. Spirituality entails internal, what to say? This author's preface, I'm sorry, just,
That's fine.
there is one thing which I wanted to just quote. Spirituality entails individual growth, then self-exploration and an interpretation of the universe and one's role within it. A beautiful phrase. Spirituality entails, so this is what I was trying to say in the previous answer also when he tries to, so your question was related to yoga, and it is this something which he felt is a must. What is yoga? Indriya nigraha, right? Yoga's chittavritti nirodha. Chittavritti nirodha actually leads to indriya nigraha. So spirituality entails individual growth. So atmupamyena sarvatra, that vision, that is what made him reach out all people, and all the good things that he has done is essentially seeing oneself in other being. Okay, so entails self-exploration. That's what you mean, and then interpretation of the universe and one's own role within it. The role that he placed is seva, 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 seva. So that is what this. Thank you very much.
All right. We have a round of applause for Dr. Balasubramaniam, the power within the leadership legacy of Narendra Modi. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please be seated. I request all our panelists to please come forward for a group picture together. Ladies and gentlemen, please be on your seats. Please. And I think it has been a wonderful, wonderful panel discussion. So interactive, so detailed. Everyone, please give a huge round of applause to all our panelists. Come on. Ashish sir, I would like to request you to present the mementos now. I request all our panelists to please be here. Ashish sir, I would request you to please present the memento to Shri Gaurang Das Prabhu sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge round of applause. Gaurang sir, thank you so much for joining us today. Now I would like to request sir to please present the memento to Dr. Swati Piramal. Please, a huge round of applause. Ashish sir, I now request you to present the memento to Professor K. Rama Subramaniam. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And now it's time for us to present the memento. Ashish sir, could you please do the honor and present the memento to Dr. Bala Subramaniam, our author. Give a huge round of applause. Mr. Zaka has beautifully moderated this wonderful panel discussion. Let's give him a huge round of applause and present the memento to Dr. Zaka Jacob. Thank you so much. Now I would like to call upon stage Mr. Amit Chandra and Mr. Adil General Bhai. Please. Ashish sir, I would request you to please present the memento to Mr. Amit Chandra, sir. And now I request Ashish sir to please present the memento to Mr. Adil Janul Bhai. Give a huge round of applause. All right, now it's time for me to call upon Mr. Adil Janul Bhai to deliver the vote of thanks. Please give him a huge round of applause.
I just wanted to thank the folks who put this together as we end this. NSE, Ashish and NSE supported this. Please, a huge round of applause for them. And ASSOCHAM, who very kindly arranged all of this. And then finally, the thanks to all of the team from Dr. Balu's organization and all the folks from Capacity Building Commission who are here, who helped put all of this together, and the whole team from NSE. But most importantly, I'd like to propose a huge round of thanks to all of you who turned up to enjoy this. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You guys have been a great audience. Thanks to all our panelists. And everyone, give a huge round of applause for the book once again. Can we hear it? Come on. Thank you so much.